Hi everyone, it's Elizabeth here. So I wanted to do this video in regards to how to balance logic and spirit. And so I have always believed in balancing logic and spirit for several reasons. One, I think I'm just a very balanced individual, and I guess I just don't necessarily agree with living in one world or the other. It's very noticeable that today we are transitioning as a society into a very logical, I guess, society or kind of a global world, just especially with the birth of technology and with the growth of things like business and capitalism and things like that, that there is a lot of logic that is definitely necessary in order to operate, business or just to operate in this kind of the earth plane world. But the reality is, we kind of need a balance of both. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. I know a lot of spiritual people who can't really ground themselves or can't really get their act together in the earth plane. Like they're cycling through jobs. They can't keep jobs. They definitely can't budget very well. So they're constantly in and out of these periods of hardship with money. And so they suffer a lot on this planet because they are very sensitive spiritual souls, but they are constantly, it's like they're almost living in the spiritual world and they're not really able to pull together with some logic and reason and some practicality in order to operate, a little bit through the mundane human experience. So I had an experience recently on LinkedIn where I shared a blog, which I'll post down below, which was just talking about how nature is very powerful in healing. And so I am a very mystical person. I do believe in Christianity in the faith-based sense, not in the religious dogma sense. I believe that Jesus was kind of the ultimate light being on this planet, if he was the incarnation of God's soul. And I just think, yeah, I just believe in, Western Christian values. And having a lot of conversations with people who are from the Christian community, I could definitely tell which ones are indoctrinated by religion. And the thing is, the ones that are indoctrinated by religion, who are so by the book, they're the ones that are so completely disconnected from nature, and they don't really use their brain or use some logic in itself. So I posted this article on LinkedIn on a spiritual community web page on LinkedIn, and it was just talking about the blog was just about how nature is very powerful in healing, and I share some examples and I kind of talk about the different elements. There's a different type of energy that you feel at the ocean as compared to what you do at a desert and the mountains. So everything has its part and its reason in life. And someone replied on the comments that people who are stating that nature is created by itself is leading people on the wrong path when God created everything. And so I think the person didn't even read the article or the blog or my thoughts, because the whole point was how nature is healing. And we can use nature in the sense to help heal ourselves, but that I had no conversation in that blog post about who created nature or about God creating nature or not. And so the funny thing is, like, I do believe God created this world, but God gave us a brain that is equipped with logic that helps us navigate life through this earth plane. And if he created animals and humans and nature, why is it we can't be separate from that? To me, that is illogical. We cannot be creatures of the earth, but also not give relevance to the creatures on this planet, but also to the power that nature has for us. It goes back to the parable of the boat. The guy is standing on the rooftop in a flood. I wrote a blog link about this. I'll post it below as well. He's in a flood, and he has like a boat, a helicopter, a car come by. He has all these different means of people who are rescuing him, and he's ignorant enough to stand on his roof and just say, God's gonna save me. And then the guy dies, he drowns, and up in heaven he's like, God, why didn't you save me? And God goes, well, I sent you a message, I sent you a car, I sent you a boat, I sent you a helicopter. So it's like, these are the things. If you are suffering and you're going through parts of your life that are in pain, God might send you to a national park, or God might, make you or lead you or guide you to spend a little bit more time in nature, because nature has the abilities to absorb negative energy and help transmute that into something positive. And that's where a lot of religious dogma, they don't understand energy and how, you can kind of recreate energy and negative experiences and make them kind of into a positive. So, like I mentioned earlier, is that some people usually live in one world or the other. You have some people who are so spiritual they can't get their shit together on planet Earth. And then you have other people who are super logical, that they think anybody who believes in God is pretty much stupid and dumb and ignorant. And the one example I do want to share is that I once had a lady from France who was my training client. She worked for Amazon, but her degrees were in physics. And throughout the time that I was training with her, she ended up starting to explore certain realms of spirituality, because she did get cancer, and that was very tragic for her because she was in her 30s. The cancer healed, but it also came back, and so she started to explore spirituality in various different means, like meditation. She was going to Buddhist centers. So I wasn't judging or anything based on what form of spirituality she was going to. But the interesting part about this is that she said her brain was, as a physicist, was trained so logically that it was very hard for her to perceive anything beyond the rational, logical eye. And when she started to see things with her third eye, or understand things that you can't see, which is the unforeseen world, the spirit world, that took a lot of time for her to start to retrain her brain. And she said she's still very skeptical, like naturally, because that's just how you are trained as a scientist, is to really think about your hypothesis and to be skeptical of certain things and very analytical. And so throughout the development of her own spirituality, she noticed that there were a lot of things that started happening in her life that were very, I don't know if the word is illogical, but it's like science couldn't really quite prove that. It was a very, transcendental or some sort of mystical experience that it went against everything that she was told, which was a very rigid analytical thought process from science. So we need to have a balance of both. And when I say that God equipped us with a brain with logic, it's like, look, we are basically walking balls of chemistry. We are created with the same atoms that nature has and the sun has. The sun has hydrogen and oxygen atoms. Water is two hydrogen atoms bounded with one oxygen atom. We are created with, the human body is about 80-85% water. So you can't go around just saying that we're separate from, this God created thing, this manifestation of life. But what you can start to understand is that if you start balancing a little bit of the logic and spirit, things come to you, especially in manifestation, to you in a very logical way. So with a lot of Christians, I mean, in the Christian thought process, they say that you should be worshiping God and not nature, and the sun and the moon and the stars and astrology. And to that, I definitely do agree. But I just think these things, like astrology or meditation or yoga, are tools to help us improve ourselves. Especially because science is starting to show how yoga and meditation is so beneficial for the brain, for relaxation, for better health. Yoga can help people overcome emotional eating. If you notice today that we have so many different problems of the mind and the brain, and the Christian community could be like, oh my God, yoga is demonic. But if you use it as a simple form of physical exercise, your body is going to go through a transformational type of experience because you are exerting different hormones during and after, say, a yoga and a meditation practice as compared to not doing it. So in some sense, neurons that fire together wire together, and things that are with like yoga and meditation, they're helping people rewire themselves. So in those type of modalities, technically you can believe in any god that you want, or the supreme god, whatever, but um, it's not giving any, people can go down the rabbit hole and go down different paths and have different detours in life, and you do see a lot of separation. So for example, if somebody's into Buddhism, a lot of times they end up hating Christianity. And then you have a lot of Christians who are still stuck in a lot of personal issues, but they're casting all their problems off to Jesus, but they're still porn addicts and all this stuff because they're not going through these different tools, or getting a counselor or a psychologist, or doing meditation to help rewire the brain. So that's where you need to start balancing a little bit of logic and spirit, and just understand that you can go too deep in either end of the spectrum of in logic and spirit. I do want to talk about Ecclesiastes 3. I can't ever say that. Yes, Ecclesiastes 3. So there is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. So the reason why I shared that is because when we're trying to learn to balance logic and faith, like I said before, sometimes we tend to go too far in one direction, but you have to understand that everything in life is created with a balance. And so, nature in itself is showing us the balance of life. Nature goes through, right now we're in autumn. It's going through the time of letting go, exposing true colors, letting go. It will go through the time of death and hibernation. After that quiet time, you get the rebirth, you get the spring, the budding of the new flowers, and new babies born in nature with the animals. And then you have the time of flourishing and growth, which is through the summer, where everything is at its peak and at its beauty in its time of growth. And so if God created nature, you have to understand that he also created everything to happen how it is. And nature is a reflection for us to help understand our cycles of life. We will go through time periods where everything balances out. We will go through a time period where we're very loving, and then maybe we're very angry and hateful. A season in the world of spirituality doesn't necessarily mean 3 or 4 months like it does in the calendar year. It could be 2 weeks, or it could be 4 years. Life will continuously send you lessons until you figure out how to solve those problems, or to graduate from those lessons, especially if they're starting to repeat themselves. We see this a lot in love relationships, where people tend to repeat the same patterns in love because they choose the same type of partner, but it's like the same pattern is repeating itself, and they think it's going to get better, but the reality, it's not getting better. Most likely it's a lesson for you to turn around and walk away. So, a lot of times too, certain full-on all beliefs in God, because we are entering a different time period, we have to use logic today. In the age of Pisces, Pisces is a mystical sign, so you just saw everything where there were like fairy tale fantasy love stories. There's all these myths about certain things like fairies and all these tales that come from the Celtic pagan communities and stuff like that, which are great. But we're now entering the digital age, which is very logical. So I just believe that you need to have both. You can apply logic to anything, and that's where it can get a little bit messy, because you could look at the sky and be like, oh, well, it's blue because I don't know, because my kindergarten teacher told me it was blue, instead of like looking at the reasons why the sky is actually blue. So you see this a lot in politics, where logic can be um, shown or applied to either side. Like when people are talking about borders, they could say like, well, we don't need a border because we're all made of stardust. And well, that makes sense, like we are all humans, we are all creatures of God and specimens of the divine. But the reality is, on this human plane, there are different parts of the world that have different belief systems, as well as, different priorities in how they want to live their life, especially if there's certain types of religion, or women have very different lives in the West as compared to in the East. So, it's like logically the human border thing kind of made sense to some degree, because if we had no borders or boundaries within ourselves or within the world, um, we would be up our ass in a bunch of crime kind of everywhere, when every place is already suffering from a bunch of crime. So, I'm not going to go down that path, but my point is, like, people can apply logic to anything. So it's like, although we are all spiritual beings having this human experience, um, would a one world government with no borders on this planet really be a wise decision? Because humans have been fighting about this for thousands of years, and maybe there's a reason why. So you have to really look at everything through a logical lens and a spiritual lens, and then just kind of find the balance of the two. So we can't lose faith in life. I think faith and hope is very necessary to keep people going, especially during times of hardships and kind of like whatever trials and tribulations. But things will come to you in a very logical way. It's just not gonna, if you want a baby, the stork isn't gonna drop the baby down through your ceiling, or sorry, through your chimney and into your bed. So anyways, these are some thoughts that I have about balancing logic and spirit. I think the Dalai Lama, excuse me, preaches both, and I do think we need to balance both sides of the story. I'm so sorry. I'm getting over a cold. All right, I'm going to end this video. Bye.